two really big favors, maybe three. Now, one is just be nice and quiet like you're doing right now. The other one, is hold your questions. Don't ask questions now. You know why? They were a little bit different. Like their houses aren't the same as our houses. They had to make their houses from nature. Now look at this. The boys and girls, sometimes you would all help out, and the boys, you would chop the bark off a tree, and you might make a little, this is a little bark house, and it's called a wigwam. Can you say wigwam?
Wigwam.
And this is for one family, a mother, a father, and one or two children. And some of you might have been camping already. It's just like camping. You would spend most of your time outside, but you would just go in the house at night just to sleep. But you know what? Sometimes the Lenape families, they like living together. You might want to live together with, say, your sister and her family, or your mother, no, not your mother-in-law, but you might want to live in a longer house. And it's still made of bark from trees, but does anybody know what they call this? Take a guess. Well, wigwams are little ones. They just call this a long house. Pretty easy, isn't it? It's just long. And maybe 5 families could live together. Each family had their own little place inside the house. And like I said, everybody would build the houses. But you know what, boys? When you grew up, you were the stronger ones. So you had to take the stone axes and cut the bark off the trees, and you had to make the houses. And boys, that was the good part, making the house. You know what the bad part was?
What?
Well, once you got done making your house, it belonged to your wife. So, you know, times really haven't changed. Even the kids. Now, you were named after your mom, not your dad. Now, you could belong to the wolf, turtle, or turkey family. Now, wait. Whatever your mom was, that's what you would be. So if your mom was from the turtle family, you would be a what?
Turtle.
That's right, a turtle. But then you couldn't marry a turtle. So you always had to marry somebody that was different than you. So you would end up marrying a wolf, or like in my case, you know, a turkey. Now, when you were born, your mom did you a very big favor. She dipped you into the ice-cold water. Do you think that was very nice? Well, do you think that you had hot showers and baths inside of your bark house? No. You had to take your baths in the cold lakes and rivers. So your mom, she would dip you into the cold water quickly just to get you used to it. But then she would wrap you up with nice warm furs and hang you on a board. Yeah. Oh yes, it was called a cradle board. Now that was to keep you out of trouble. Oh look, you did grow up nice and straight on those. And it's true, your mom, she can put this on her head and carry you around. But the village, the Indian village, was a very dangerous place for small children. Oh, there were fires that were going on. And of course there were wild animals out in the woods. So, when you were a little baby, you weren't safe crawling on the ground by yourself. So when your mom was too busy to carry you around like this, guess what she would do with you? She'd hang you up in a tree, right where she knew where you were, nice and safe. How would you like to be hung up in a tree all day? Now, sometimes your mom, she would have baby food. But do you think it came in little jars? No, it didn't come in little jars. Guess what your mom would do? Back then they didn't have stores. So your mom would take your food and she would chew it up for you. And then she would give it to you. Delicious. Now, of course, there came a time when children had to learn how to walk. But I think you know that's why butterflies were invented, right? Oh, of course. A little baby would be crawling on the ground, and a butterfly would come by, and the baby would stand up trying to catch the butterfly, and next thing you know, it was walking. It was very easy. Now, in the village, the girls and the boys, well, you know what? You never had to go to school. You never had well, you had a different kind of a school, but you never got hit. They had you know what? Girls and boys had a really nice life. You know what you did? You just had fun. Well, until you got to be about, say, 4 or 5 years old, because you did have to grow up at some point. Now, in a village, girls and boys oftentimes did different work. You would. And girls, you were lucky ones, because you would all work together. The girls took care of the houses, and they would cook the food, and of course they would work out in the gardens too. And you know what? You didn't get you know what? When you were about 4 years old, that's when you would get a real name. You didn't have a real name until you were then. When you were young, you just had like a nickname. But after you were 4, somebody would follow you around the village and they'd watch what you do. Do you see this young lady right here? She's always touching the leaves on the plants. So guess what they called her? Touching leaves. Yes. And do you see this boy right here? He's always walking his dog in the morning. So guess what they called him?
Walking dog.
Walking dog. And you see this girl is always beating up all the boys. So guess what they called her? Man killer. Only kidding. She's nice. Now, actually, in a village, girls and boys, like I said, girls, you were the lucky ones. You know why? You all worked together. You sang songs and danced, and everybody helped one another in each other's garden. It was so much fun being a girl. But guys, I think you know what you had to do. You had to be the hunters. Yes. Now, the boys, but can you guys run out to the woods, just grab a deer and drag it right back to your village? No. See, boys, you had a lot to learn. Your father had to teach you where a deer lives or what it eats, and to learn these things, you had to get very close to it. So you know what he would do? Make you look like an animal. He might put a deer skin on his head or a wolf skin on your head, and when the two of you went out into the woods, you would look like animals, and you could sneak up and learn all about them. Now, sometimes they had to go hunting, and they had to shoot a deer, but do you think they had guns like our hunters do today? No. Then what do you think they used? Bows and arrows. Yes, you're right. Yep. And you know what, boys? That's right. Boys, you had to learn how to make these things. There were no stores. So you had to take wood, and you had to make a bow, and you had to make string from plants and straight arrows. And boys had to make traps like these. These are traps. They could catch a turkey or a rabbit. Sometimes they would make big ones even to catch a bear. Now, to make all of this stuff, to make bows and arrows and traps and things, boys, you needed tools. But they didn't have iron tools like our moms and dads. So, what do you think the hardest thing in nature is to make a tool out of?
Rock.
Yes, very good. Now, your father would teach you how to take rocks, and you would break them apart, and look what you can make. They made stone knives and axes, and this is a chisel and a scraper, and with these stone tools, you can chop a small tree down. Boys, you can make a wooden handle. You can carve a wooden bowl or a spoon. And sometimes they made very big things too, like canoes. Now, does anybody here know why they would need a canoe for? Why would you need a canoe? What do you think? Oh, to catch fish. Now, there's a good idea. But you know what? To catch fish, you had to make little fish hooks out of bone, or fishing nets, or spears. And sometimes they would make a fence like this with a basket in the middle. And you know what everybody would do? Everybody in the village come way back here, and you start splashing the water, and you would chase all the fish into that basket, and then you just had to lift up a big basket of fish. Pretty smart. Wow. But you know what? There was another reason for using canoes. Do you think they had roads and cars like us? No. The rivers were their roads, and the canoes were like their cars. They could travel on them and visit other people, right? Sure. Now, guys, you were the ones that had to make a lot of this stuff. But you know what, boys? You were very smart. Yeah. They didn't have stores like us, so they had to figure out how to make all their tools and their clothes and everything needed out of animal bones and stone and wood and skins. Yep, the guys will go out in nature and figure everything out. Okay, boys, when you grew up, what do you think you looked like? Well, you know what? You were pretty tall, and you were in really good shape. They liked to run a lot. Now, they didn't have cloth clothes like we do. So they had to wear animal skin. And boys, most of the year, you just ran around with a little flap like this. That's it. But when it got